We just want to welcome Carl Absher, he's a retired arborist, and he's going to talk about native trees that are better than a Callery pear, which many people know as a Bradford pear. And he's going to take questions as we go along, and we'll be monitoring the chat, so we'll bring some of those up too. And just at the end, we have a few announcements about some other upcoming events. So let Carl take it away.
Okay. I have to stay here. I'm glad to be here. You know, this is kind of one of my subjects. Don't know what to name this presentation. It kind of came out of a presentation at the Ladies Community Club down in Roanoke County a few years ago. I forget what they asked me to do. I said, I've done that before and I'm getting tired of it. I'll think of something else. And at that time, it was native trees better than Bradford Pear. And some of the attendees there were genuinely offended. I don't think I'll have that problem today. I suspect I'm preaching to the choir. But just in case, if you want to say, I don't have a Bradford Pear, I have a Chanticleer or a Cleveland Select or Aristocrat, it's all the same. They all have the same problems. So you forget that. It's just not going to fly. If you say, well, I have mine pruned every year so they don't fall apart in a storm. Well, it's your money. Do whatever you please. But you're not going to stop them from spreading everywhere else to everyone that doesn't. So the Bradford Pear, they're a hybrid of Callery pear native to Southeast Asia. So, in here, they were first introduced as Bradford pear in mid-60s, 64, I think. And I'm guilty of planting a lot of them and specified quite a few of them until I knew better. And now it's right up there with autumn olive to me. It's one of my most hated plants. When it was first introduced, it was to be a sterile tree. You didn't have to worry about it spreading anywhere. Which they're sterile. The hybrid is sterile with other hybrids of that same hybrid. But if there's pollen flying around from any other Pyrus species or another hybrid, well, then you have seeds that are going to grow, and birds love the berries. Off they go. Another thing that the uninitiated say, well, I've had my trees in 5 years. I don't see any coming up any place. Well, that's kind of the way most invasives work. You know, you don't just put them out and the next year they're everywhere. They're there for a few years. If you're out really separated from anywhere, it may take several years before one finally gets pollinated. Well, then you have the little tree planted over nearby, which is still not a problem for a year or two. And it gets old enough. And everybody starts having viable seeds. And then the population goes right through the roof. Every fence row where a bird sits soon has Bradford pears, well, actually Callery pears. They're simple hybrids, so the progeny are not the same as what they came from. The progeny of a Bradford pear or an aristocrat will not be aristocrats. Most of them will revert to the original Callery pear, which is a thorny, nasty thing to get through in the thicket. So then you have something like this hillside out here, out next to the frog pond, out around the dump. They are absolutely taking over everything right there. So it is about as invasive as it gets. Don't know how we're ever going to get rid of it, but we don't need to plant anymore. And if you really want to plant something in your yard, plenty of other options we're going to talk about. And if you have them in your yard, just cut them down. Just bite the bullet. Cut them down and replace them. we're gonna be talking about different things. If you have a question, just raise your hand and then I'll repeat it back. Yes, ma'am.
Do any of these pears have any fruit?
Oh, yeah.
They do.
Yes, yes. The question was, do any of them have fruit? And yes, they have a lot of fruit. Not edible for us. They're a little bitty, hard, almost woody thing. They do soften up in the fall. So birds, raccoons, squirrels, and everything else will eat them. And that's who spreads them around. But they're not an edible fruit. So, all right, move on to the next one. One of the complaints you hear about native trees and shrubs, I've heard it from landscapers, landscape architects, different things. I've been in the business a long time now, or was in the business, is they say, well, look how thin it is. It's not attractive. It's just has flowers. Yeah, they're pretty flowers, but it's just got a few of them. But you take that little serviceberry out of the edge of the woods there, plant it out there where it can get a little light. It dresses up and gets ready to go out. And right there is a good one. Instead of the Bradford Pear, they're actually, well, there's several species around, but this one, arborist, is a tree form. It'll get 40, maybe taller than that. The other one is a smaller shrubbery type thing. It's 15 or 20 feet tall. Alleghaniensis, but they're both just as good. Asking about edible berries, this is one of the best berries out there. All you have to do is beat the birds to them. And that can be a job sometimes. They're wonderful berries, and that's worth planting just for the berries. Do you all want the botanical names of everything? Yes, ma'am.
If you plant a hybrid of the serviceberry, is that okay?
If you plant a hybrid of
Serviceberry. That kind, I planted a serviceberry that is a shrub, but it's not, it's a hybrid.
Uh-huh.
Is that okay?
question was, she planted a hybrid of a serviceberry. Is that okay? It's great by me. It's good by me. I think it's good. Just get it planted.
All right.
And I'm hard to keep on subjects. We probably shouldn't get into a discussion too much what's natives, what's not. Most of the horticultural varieties are actually came from a sport. They won't reproduce true. They have to be reproduced by grafts or cuttings, something like that. Same with the hybrids. I don't know about the serviceberry hybrids. So if you plant it out there, it has seeds. Those seeds are going back to the species form, except in minor cases. And, you know, replace the Bradford Pear. The hybrid native tree is a lot better than the Bradford Pear. Does that answer your question, or just, or am I dancing around it? Okay.
And it has plenty of berries.
Oh yeah.
My grandkids love.
Yes, it's a great tree. For one of the first ones to bloom in the spring. Years ago, before I taught my wife all about trees, we would be out in the springtime. She said, "Look at all the dogwoods on top of the mountain." I say, "Honey, those aren't dogwoods. Those are serviceberry." And if you're interested in nomenclature, they got some real interesting stuff on that, but probably best not get tied up on that today.
Carl?
Yes.
I just wanted to say there's a comment in the chat. Somebody said there's a lot of great serviceberry foraging all over campus. Dozens and dozens of trees.
There's a lot on campus.
Yes.
Yes. The comment was that there's a lot of good serviceberries on campus.
And in Caboose Park.
Pardon?
And in Caboose Park.
Yes, yes. And it's a, getting to be more popular, and hopefully it's due to the native plant movement. It's a good one to be planted. Then our good native redbud, Cercis canadensis. You know, why would you plant a Bradford pear when you can have this? It's similar in size and shape to the Bradford pears, more attractive flower. The flowers do not stink, and it's going to live much longer. Wood's stronger and it's going to last longer. And really, in my opinion, redbuds, they bloom good some years. The rest of the time, they're just gorgeous, spectacular. I mean, you know, they really go to it. And I don't know why they call them redbuds. They were, you know, the legend is that they were the Judas tree that Judas hung himself from. And so they went from a white flower. They blushed in shame. If you get your hybrids of horticultural varieties, you can have redbuds in pink, purple, but really not red. I wouldn't call them red. You know, they're here everywhere. You don't need to go to a nursery and buy one of them. They're everywhere. Another one that's right here all the time has been a good tree from ever, the dogwood. We need to be satisfied, really maybe elated with what we have. We don't need to go to China or Japan or Europe or any place else to find new plants with what we're blessed with right here. Some of the best variety in the whole planet is right here where we're at. And the dogwoods, if you go to the horticultural varieties, you've got white, red, just a little bit of red in that upper left-hand corner, or pink. They graft real easily. If you just have your neighbor has one you like, just get your little slip and graft one onto your tree. You know, their grass is getting green. The leaves are just starting out. The dogwoods are blooming. It's a great spring flower, and hard to beat it. This one doesn't get planted enough. Silver bell, Alesia tetrapeta, if I say that right. And I've got the written name down on all of these, but I can promise you most of them I can't not pronounce. This tree, I don't think it's native to Montgomery County. It does get into Virginia. It's common down in North Carolina and Tennessee in the mountains. It's a nice little tree, gets up to 30 or 40 feet in the right conditions. You know, out in the Smokies, there's some as big as tulip trees. I've talked to folks that thought they're two separate species. I think the big ones were so decimated back in the days of industrial logging that there's not enough of them around to be sure. But either way, it's a great little tree. It's like the serviceberry. It doesn't look like much in the woods. Put it out like this, it's going to be flowers up and down. And it starts blooming at an early age. I gave some to Jamie King when he was down in Roanoke, actually traded him some. But they were seedlings 1 year old, and he planted them down in Roanoke somewhere, and they were blooming the second year. So good little tree to have around. Good little tree to grow if you like growing trees. I don't know that I've seen them in nurseries around here. A lot of the nurseries in North Carolina will have them.
There is one right outside the library by the library, and it's in seed now.
There's one right outside the library.
If you go out the front door, it's on your right, by the library.
I'll be back next spring. I won't have to go to the mountains. All right. The comment was there's a silver bell right in front of the library by the bicycle rack. So if you want to check it out, there it is.
Flora, I just pulled it up on the flora, and it says that it is native in this county and additionally 5 other counties that are around us and south of us.
Okay.
So that's
It is native to the area, although they're tough to find in the woods around here. I have black hall viburnum right here, prunifolium. Of course, you got the rusty black hall, possum hall, nannyberry, arrowwood. There's about a half a dozen different viburnums, and you can find them in nurseries. They're really difficult for me to tell them apart, but they're all good little trees. They have these white clusters of flowers in the spring, right after the leaves come out. And they all make little clusters of edible fruit, not great. The birds and wildlife think it is great. So they're tough wood, they're tough tree. Which reminds me of something I really forgot about the Bradford Pear that makes it more invasive. I think I forgot it. You can plant them anywhere. If you kill a Bradford Pear, any kind of Callery Pear, you may as well not plant anything. I believe you plant it in the middle of the street and it would grow.
Did you say that the viburnum sometimes is invasive?
No, I said it's not. I just happened to think about the viburnums, I would never call them invasive.
Oh, not
They reminded me of something that I'd really forgotten about the Bradford pears or Callery pears. You see these a lot in Montgomery County along the roads come May and June. Those white flowers will be out there all over the place. They're blooming kind of with the blackberries, I guess. But they'll be in a lot of those fence rows, and they're in fence rows because the possums and birds and whatnot all like them. And so that's where they end up getting planted at. And they're in our understory. They're just a really good wildlife tree, and they bloom well in the shade. Hawthorn's the same thing. If it's planted out in the open, it's going to grow in size and shape similar to the Callery pears. It has, just like this, has a great flower on it. It holds it a while. The berries are good for wildlife. It has good fall color if the leaves aren't really bad and infested with some leaf diseases to where they just kind of fade away come fall. But really strong wood, really a long-lived little tree. So there's something to consider. There's horticultural varieties out there, or you can find the pure natives. Ladder nut. I think most people probably consider it to be a shrub, but I like it, so I got it in here. A lot of my favorite trees changes from season to season or what kind of mood I'm in. So some of these that go into last night, or some went out. And the bladder nut it really likes moist areas along streams. Little bell flowers, kind of greenish white. The little seed pods that are in the lower right, they'll hang on there a long time after they dry. And they just kind of flutter in the breeze. So it's a little interesting tree from springtime on. And there are a lot of them growing along our streams. Maybe that's why nobody goes to the trouble to plant them in the yard. I do not know. This hop tree can be a tough one to find. It maybe gets 15 feet tall, so it kind of on that line in between a tree and a shrub. It has those greenish white flowers. They're not really great, although I've seen pictures of some that are just covered with flowers. I've never seen one like that. I include it here because it's one of the best pollinator plants out there. It's preferred food of the giant swallowtail and a few other species of butterfly, plus a lot of butterflies and whatnot that don't get the press. It can be a little bit harder to find than others. I've seen some butterfly sites and things like that that do advertise it, but I don't think I've ever seen one in a nursery or anything. I can promise you they're not in Walmart or Lowe's. But if you want a pollinator garden with a little tree in it, this is a good one for you. All of these trees are favorites of mine. This one might be a special favorite, the French tree. It's blooming as the leaves are unfurling, so they're kind of light green. And when the blooms really hit, which is most years, they kind of glow, it seems to me like. It's kind of a shimmering, glowing little tree. Nothing else looks like it. It's just really unique. It's native, they're all over. But they don't get a chance to get out in the sunshine where they can show off. They are dioecious. There's male and female. But this is cool. The males probably have a better flower show than the females. No berries, just nice flowers. It's good. There's a few other plants that do that. Spice bush does that, I think. But this is one should be in every native plant garden. While I'm thinking about it, pictures. I've got a few of my own pictures that aren't very good. Of course, you get on the internet anymore, you get on Google, you can find all kinds of pictures. You don't always find the source of where they came from. I've got a couple I borrowed from the Bee Tree app. Just to show some of the details, like some of the flowers and things where they're split screen. I borrowed some from Dr. Craddock down at UTC. So I want to make sure, you know, these are not all my pictures. Just trying to show you some of my favorite trees. One of the problems with the French tree, it's in the same family as ash trees. And they have found emerald ash borers attack it in some spots, apparently where there's a really heavy insect load from all the ash trees around it. I haven't seen the problem, but I've read about it. I treated mine for emerald ash borer anyway, just in case. Yellowwood. It's a native tree, really with a widespread range, but not common anywhere, I don't think. In the forest, it's another one of those that's going to be tall and slender. Just you can walk by it and never notice it. This tree right here is about, in my yard, it's about 3 years old when this picture was taken. Now it's pretty well taken over the yard. It's wider than it does tall. They go 30 feet tall and 40 feet wide. There's a mature one covered in flowers. So I think so, yes. But I'm not sure where. You can see the building behind it. It has a lot better flowers show than mine. I've got a big maple tree behind mine that shades half of it. I don't think this one is native to Virginia. Maybe down in East. Yes.
North Carolina.
Pardon?
I think it's from North Carolina, but it grows here. I mean, I have one of those.
Oh, yes, I do too.
Yeah, I heard that, I think it's native to North Carolina.
Yes, North Carolina and a little south. I think it might be down in eastern Virginia. The comment was, this tree is probably not a Virginia native unless it's down towards the eastern shore. It is native in North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia down through there. It grows well here. Has these little vertical red flowers, and I mean they are red. Problem with it, the deer love it. They think it's the best thing there ever was. If you can keep the deer off of it, it makes a good hedge. I've seen hedges made with it. So you get a hedge 15 feet tall with a nice screen. You don't have to prune. You just look at it all the time. And I've seen them flower a lot better than this one in the photo. Trees don't have to be known for their flowers to be better than Callery Pear. So here's one of my favorites that really the flowers are inconspicuous. The fruit's inconspicuous. Size and shape, it's nice rounded crown. The foliage is attractive, that's a nice green. Just because a leaf is green doesn't mean that it's attractive. It's got the texture and everything. It has a really nice yellow fall coloration. And look at the picture there on the right. The trunk is really unique the way it's fluted. It has that tight bark. Another name for it's musclewood. You can see why they're really ripped, I guess the kids say now. Once the leaves are gone, that's, you get all those shadows across it, gives you a real interesting texture out there in your flower beds during the winter. And another little tree that you'll find growing almost beside the hornbeam sometime, the hop hornbeam. Again, it's 30 feet tall, maybe a little larger, nice round crown, attractive foliage. It gets its name from its fruit capsules, look like little hops hanging down. They will hang on there well into the winter if squirrels don't eat them all. And that gives it a little interest. And the bark on the leaves and trunk is just the opposite of the hornbeam. It's all flaky and stringy. But again, it just gives that tree a different texture, real attractive appearance during the dormant season. Another one of my best favorites is a sourwood. It blooms July, August, when nothing else is blooming. It has those creamy white flowers that are kind of in little racemes. Again, if it's out in the woods, all those flowers are on the tip top. You may walk through the woods and not even see them. If it's planted in the open, they're on it bottom to top. The seed capsules stay on there well into the winter, kind of decorated like Christmas balls. The fall color, that's normal fall color, that picture. They got the best fall color of any tree we have, in my opinion, for what it's worth. And even the leaves, they're kind of like a laurel leaf, real lustrous green, shiny. But that fall color is hard to beat. If there's a problem with them, they can be a little cantankerous about growing in cultivation. They do not like to be transplanted. So you might got to start with a little one and wait on it. But the woods are full of them. They just don't like to be handled at all. Now I talked about the trees that are tall and slender. You put them out in the open, they fill in. A black gum is a big tree in the woods. You plant it in open, it's going to top out 40, maybe 50 feet, but it's going to take it a long time to do that. And again, this is a normal fall color for a black gum. So if you're going to plant a tree for its flowers, you need to consider what it looks like in the fall, or, you know, a tree could be considered just for its fall color. Really strong wood, long-lived trees. Not planted enough. I also like the sweet gums, but not sure I'm supposed to be planting them here. This one don't get enough credit. Sassafras, another one that just turns dark red in the fall. It does have flowers, little yellowish green flowers, but I've never seen them where they're really dense on a tree. They're kind of scattered out and inconspicuous. Planted out, you know, it's planted out in the open. It makes a really nice tree. Years ago, like in the 70s, when I was first getting into arboriculture, I was working in a yard and there was a nice little tree, it was dormant, a nice little tree over a patio. I didn't know what it was at first. It didn't register on me. It was a sourwood, and it was just a perfect shape, about 20 inches in diameter, symmetrical, full crown, but nobody plants them out in the open and gives them a chance to do that. Other thing about the sassafras is they do send up root sprouts. Although it makes it easy if you know where something in the woods that you want to move to your yard, just dig up a little root sprout. Witch hazel, yeah, it's another one. It might be a tree, I don't know. Probably not. But it blooms when nothing else does. And I really like it when it's late enough to bloom with some snow on the ground. They usually start around November. May go on into December. There's some Chinese witch hazel and a hybrid witch hazel that's Chinese and Japanese crossed that don't bloom on up until March or April. So if you see a witch hazel blooming on up late winter, early spring, be a little suspicious because they're really hard to tell apart otherwise. I've seen some misidentified in a Tennessee Arboretum. Kept going around and around for a while, and they finally decided that they were the hybrid Japanese Chinese. So since that's winter tree, I guess we need to talk about where we could find some native trees. If you're careful, you know, some little seedlings, you can always collect seeds or even dig up a little seed in the woods. I like kind of a hobby is collecting the seeds and growing them myself. Right there on second on the list, treeseeds.com. They have seeds for almost every plant you can imagine. Don't have it all the time. And they also have information on seed treatments so you can get them germinate. So if you like growing trees, native trees, consider growing them from scratch. The Virginia Native Plant Society has a lot of information on all the nurseries in Virginia, the native plant nurseries, not just trees, but native plants. They have a whole list of nurseries in there. And so that's a good source to find the native seeds. Plantnative.org is the same thing, only on a wider scale. Buy Virginia trees, that's right through our own division of forestry. They grow good plants, I think, and they're pretty cheap. Their selection's not the greatest, but they do have some good native trees. Mail order, I probably use Musser Forest more than anything. Now, they don't grow just native trees. They have a lot that are not native, but their seedlings are healthy, have good root systems, and they're fairly priced. And so I've used them. Last year, I bought a couple off of chiefrivernursery.com. And they're from Wisconsin or Minnesota, up in there someplace. And they sent good trees. I don't know the source of their seed, but they were the local trees I was looking for. Arbor Day, they have a few trees. Some of the quality of the trees isn't too good, but I don't think, that's my opinion. You know, that's not worth much, but they do have some selection. They sell a lot of trees. There's other place to find the native trees is just Google it. Hop tree for sale. You'll get something. Whether or not it's a dependable source, good plants, I don't know. But you do have to do a little investigating on that sometime. So that's all I have. Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
Carl, you use a really tall pot for your trees. You know, what, about 15 inches deep?
I use a really tall pot for my trees. The ones I know have a really long, nasty taproot.
Okay. Do any of these companies sell those pots, or do you get them from Amazon, or where do you get them from?
I get them from Stewie and Sons. Yeah, like the sourwood, I wouldn't even try to grow it in anything but a big pot. Let's see. Most of these trees I've got on here would grow well in just any pot. They'll probably be pot bound by the time you plant them in, but it's the ones you got, the chickpea pins and chestnut trees, they have to have room for that taproot to grow.
Carl, can you explain that question for the people?
Okay. Question was, I've given Diane some seeds that they were grown in like a 16-inch tall pot, and it helps with trees that I know have a lot of taproot on those seedlings. They have a fiber system. I don't worry about it.
And where did you get that pot?
Stewie, S-T-E or S-T-U-E-W-E, Stewie and Sons. And they may be other places too.
Somebody in the chat is asking about the hackberry tree.
Yes. Hackberry tree. I guess everybody can see that question. Is there a particular question about it?
Well, I just said, what about the common hackberry tree? I believe it is a native.
Yes, the common hackberry or sugarberry. They're cousins. They're good trees. They produce berries that are good wildlife food. Not a bad yellow fall color. And they make a good one. They like I said at the first part of this, what's my favorite tree today may not be my favorite tree next week. Okay. Hackberry may make it next week, but it didn't make it last night.
Okay, there's another question in the chat. It said, why did the Bradford tree become a predominant landscape tree when there are so many alternatives, including dogwoods and redbuds, which grow so well?
Okay, do I need to repeat that? Why did the Bradford Pear become so dominant when we had better choices? Well, the grass is always greener on the side, and we're always, being humans, attractive to the exotic. The Bradford Pear itself, I think, became popular because it's so easy to propagate. So it can be done cheaply. You can buy them for not much, and you can't kill them. Nurseries don't want people coming back, my tree died, even if they killed it. You know, if they didn't water it, even if they buried it when they covered it up. And the Bradford Pear is maybe the toughest tree out there. That's all my opinion. No facts to support it. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I had a question about the white fringe tree. You mentioned that might be some concern that it's in the same family as ash trees and may be vulnerable to that border.
Yes.
So I guess my question is, we've lost all the ash trees on our property. Is there enough of a reservoir for, like, where are the emerald ash borer fields going now that all the ash is dead?
I don't know. I hope they become extinct. But
Sorry, Carl, can you repeat that?
yeah, the question was, all our ash trees are dead. Where does that huge population and reservoir of emerald ash borers go? And I don't know. You'll have to ask an entomologist that. I would think there would be a big interruption in their life cycle, although they've been reported on the fringe tree. It's not like it's a favored tree. It was by accident, I think. I don't know on that one either, but it's a concern. Lilac's in the same family. Mm-hmm. They share some things. But I don't know.
Okay, so there's another question in the chat. I planted a red bud next to the house with the intention of moving it before it got too big. Unfortunately, it is now about 7 to 8 feet. Should I leave it or remove it?
If it's too close to the house, you need to move it. 7 or 8 feet tall shouldn't be a big deal. During the dormant season, it could even be moved bare root, but you don't want to dig it up and let it set on the ground. Before you start digging the tree, you want to have a hole ready for it where you can get down on your knees and get all that soil around the new roots. The tree's liable to need a big root ball otherwise. That could be heavy. But if it's too close to the house, any kind of tree, don't leave it there any longer. Try to move it. I hope that's a good answer.
Additional question about the red buckeye.
Yes.
There's a ton of buckeyes in the woods near my house. Those are just like common buckeye. Or
Yellow buckeye, yes.
Yellow buckeye. And those are native to here?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And they're much larger. They're much larger. The red buckeyes, 15 feet's about what all they get to. And another one that's not quite native here, and what's native and what's not is a big, long subject. It's the bottle brush buckeye. It blooms on up in the summer after things are getting hot. And it has a bloom just like its name, a bottle brush. And they're another attractive small tree. It didn't make the cut today either.